So cryptography is probably your strongest defense of all. There are a lot of stupid security measures out there, like making your employees have long, complicated passwords, ordering them not to write them down, making them change them every month. There are a lot of people that drive people nuts with stupid security measures like this that frustrate your legitimate users and do not stop the bad guys. Like changing passwords every month is very commonly recommended, and Microsoft did a study saying, what good does this do? And this is for a lack of threat modeling. What exactly are you thinking of? You're thinking that my attackers are stealing legitimate passwords and then letting them sit in a drawer for 2 months and then using them. So to stop that, I'll make my employees change their password every month. But that doesn't sound like a very realistic threat model. Anyway, cryptography is your strongest defense. Better than almost anything else, if you implement cryptography correctly, it really locks out the bad guys. They really can't get in at all. You can easily make it so that if they have the fastest computer in the world and run it for years, they still can't get in, but the good guys can still get in. Now, that's what you want. The problem is it is complicated and it is very easy to implement cryptography badly, and if we have time, I'll show you a whole bunch of bad crypto that I've been finding. I've been going through the top 100 retailers' Android apps, and it's just appalling. It's like, it's just like a savage goes up and finds an electric guitar and uses it to pound nails into a board because they don't even know what they're doing. They take the cryptographic products, just do everything wrong with apparent complete disregard, and end up with just a mess that's easy to get in. So this happens a lot. Essentially, every company that makes their own crypto just proves how much they don't know what they're doing. What you should do is learn how to use a standard library like HTTPS and use it, or the Android keychain or key store or something, and the Apple keychain. Those things are put up by the operating system designers. Just learn how to use them. You shouldn't attempt to do crypto when you don't know what you're doing, just like you probably shouldn't attempt to fly an airplane if you don't know what you're doing. But an enormous number of people take an ordinary developer and they just pretend to do crypto and hope sort of to fool people into thinking encrypted stuff when they haven't. So anyway, cryptography's been around for a very long time. We'll talk about the history of it. The symmetric algorithm has been around for millennia, and the asymmetric algorithms that have only been around for about 50 years. And that how the internet works, using this public key infrastructure, which there are two hard parts of crypto. One is the mathematics, using it correctly. And even if you solve that, the one problem that is not mathematical and very difficult to solve is key handling. Somehow there are these keys, and somehow you have to deliver the keys to the right people, and that turns out to be a very difficult problem, and not a mathematical one at all, but it's the main one that causes problems you can drive a truck through. So the point of cryptography is to take readable text and turn it into ciphertext that is not readable by ordinary people, but only readable by the people you want to read it. So somehow you have to designate a special group of people that are authorized, and they should be able to read it, but nobody else. Typically you do that with a key, and then you, by some undefined method, you somehow make sure that the good people have the key and that the bad people don't have the key. The simplest version, this started with Julius Caesar 2,500 years ago. We would just move everything forward 3 letters in the alphabet. It was the Roman alphabet at that time. This will scramble things. This is what you see in the Sunday morning cartoons. They have crypto quips with little cartoons. Children, like 5 or 6 years old, solve these things now. But when it started, this was military-grade cryptography. At a time when almost no one could read at all, even a small change in the letters was enough to completely baffle people. This is not considered secure enough for modern purposes, although Microsoft still uses it. ROT13 is the simplest case where you move everything forward 13 letters in the alphabet. If you move it forward another 13 letters, it undoes itself, so one little chart will do it. And this is how Microsoft protects your privacy in the Windows registry. If you save Internet Explorer favorites, they save the URL with ROT13 to make it so people can't look in the registry and see what you've been doing, which is fantastic and unbelievable. But there are various people that continue to use this, and that's just the beginning of the lesson you heard over and over again in this class. People do things that are insanely risky through just not understanding what's going on, and this is one of the many examples of it. So cryptanalysis is the branch of mathematics that tries to mathematically study these algorithms and find their weaknesses. And that's important because if you propose a new system, you want mathematicians to try to break it, and only if they can't break it do you then regard it as secure. That's the process that the National Institute of Standards goes through to create the crypto systems that are recommended by the government. Unfortunately, they also get pressure from the National Security Administration to lie and betray us and certify systems that they know are not safe so the government can get in, and they've been caught 3 times absolutely definitely doing that. So there are an increasing number of people who carefully use the systems the government did not recommend because they are afraid that the one the government recommends has probably been poisoned and backdoored. Anyway, the Germans had a mechanical machine, sort of very before modern computers, that just had a system of gears and dials, and you would dial in a code, and now when you type letters, different letters would come out on the page, and the only way to clear it up was to type this stuff in another machine with the correct settings on the dials. And it was really very effective. I think the end result of this thing was something like a 48-bit key, which was well beyond the capacity of things to break at that time. It was quite a coup when they managed to break the Enigma system. Steganography is a related trick. This is more than cryptography. This is covert channels. Cryptography is where you take a message and you scramble it. Now you send the message to somebody, and third parties can see that you're sending the message, but they can't read it. But steganography and covert channels are where no one even knows you have sent a message at all. You're sneaking a secret message out, and people don't even know it's happening. This has been used by terrorists for quite a while to send their orders out. What they do is they have a deal like you search for black kittens on Flickr, and the 10th image has a secret message in it. So they post it on some board. It's an altered image that has another file inside it. Nobody knows about this except people that know to look for it. It was in the Sherlock Holmes stories. They had a code to send secrets in the agony column. They would say, I saw you on the train to London. You were wearing a white jacket. I must see you again. Meet me at this place. And that meant something to somebody that knew. To anybody else, it just looked like another personal ad. So the algorithm is the steps you use to scramble the data, and a strong algorithm is one that can't be reversed by any shortcut, and then you have a key, so that in order to have security, you have to have a strong algorithm that really scrambles the data and that cannot be reversed easily, and a key that's long enough and random enough that it can't be found or guessed. So you have to not create the key in some way that can be reverse engineered, such as using a random number generator that's not really random or predictable, and you have to have the key long enough that people can't get in by just trying all possible keys. And how long the key has to be is not a mathematical question, it's a question of sort of practicality. So an 8-bit key has 256 values, 24-bit key has 16 million, 56-bit key has 10 to the 16 values, and 56-bit keys have been broken by brute force. That many calculations can be done by modern computers. 128-bit key has 10 to the 38 values, and that should be enough for a while if they're really random. But the difficult part is you don't know what's going to happen in the future. So, and if you were going to encrypt something like medical data, it's not enough to have it secret today. You really want to promise it'll still be secret in 30 or 50 or 100 years, and that is very difficult to know how much encryption you would need to really have it secret 50 years from now. So in 1997, the 56-bit key was broken by brute force. This was to prove that the government-approved standard at the time, called DES, was unsafe. It took 3 months the first time and thousands of machines over the internet. Then a couple of years later, the EFF made a special processor to do it faster. If you think in general terms, if your processor can do 1 billion calculations per second, a year is 3 times 10 to the 7 seconds, and there's less than 10 billion computers on the Earth. So in a year, you can do 10 to the 26 calculations with all the computers on Earth. And therefore, a 10 to the 38 is an awful lot bigger, 1 trillion times bigger. So even all the computers on Earth running for 1 trillion years couldn't try 128-bit keys. So you would think a 128-bit private key would be enough that your data will be secure forever. By this kind of calculation, but it really is in the realm of science fiction trying to predict the future this way. There's another way to do it, where you waste Moore's law. Moore's law is not a law of physics, but it's a real fact that computers double their speed every 2 years or 18 months. And that has been true for more than 50 years, which is insane. And no one has any clear understanding of why this happens. But if it continues, which it certainly seems to be continuing, then we will get to do 10 and 38 calculations around the year 2090. And it is just a question of religion or science fiction or something, which one of these techniques you believe in guessing about the future. So some people prefer 256-bit keys to be safe. So symmetric cryptography where you take clear text, you encrypt it into junk that nobody can read. The person who holds the key can clear it up because they hold the key and they know the algorithm. Symmetric algorithms are fast and they can be secure, but they only have one key, and that limits what they do. For example, you cannot sign a loan agreement with a symmetric algorithm. If I sign a loan agreement, tell the bank I promise to pay $1,000 a month, and if I don't, you can take my house. Then they try and take my house, and they pull up the signed agreement. I say, I didn't sign that, you signed that. And since I have the key and the bank has the key, there's no proving which one of us signed it. So it's not any good to make a signature. That's what they mean by it does not provide non-repudiation, and it does not provide authenticity. I could not sign an email with that key and have it prove who sent the email because, again, more than one person has the same key. So it doesn't really prove who you are. All right, so there's two ways to make symmetric algorithms. Stream ciphers are the ones that just operate on one bit at a time, and they have a long string of bits and encrypt them. Block ciphers operate on blocks of plain text, typically 8 bytes or 16 bytes. And they can both be secure if they're done correctly. They have, by the way, certain systematic failures. Stream ciphers, the most popular one is RC4, and it suffers from not being white, which means that not all bytes are equally probable, which turns out to be a very serious problem. If you can actually get billions of encrypted bytes, you can filter them and deduce information about the key. Block ciphers have a different problem called padding oracles. If you have to have a block 16 bytes long and you encrypt a message that's 17 bytes long, the first 16 bytes go in and the next block only has 1 byte of real data and you have to fill in the rest with padding. And it turns out that by carefully choosing plain text that forces the padding to reach certain lengths, you can deduce something about the key. There's a whole series of the padding oracle attacks with cute names. Anyway, commercial DVDs are encoded with a 40-bit key, which is very much shorter than an unbreakable key, and some hackers broke it in 1999. So the Digital Millennium Copyright Act made it illegal to publish the algorithm, and there was quite a lot of entertainment at the time, because an algorithm that just tries all the keys out of 2 to the 40 is trivial to write, and people found various ways to make a joke out of the DMCA. The DMCA says it is illegal to overcome a cryptographic system even if it's an easily broken one. And like the CFAA, the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, the combination of the DMCA and the CFAA make essentially all security research illegal. So everybody is in the boat where I am, where you can either avoid doing any research or you can break the law. And the Justice Department is aware of this, and they told us at B-Sides a year ago, you can trust us to not prosecute the good guys and only prosecute the bad guys. And that's where it stands. So I'll be showing you some research later that I can't release the recording of yet, and it probably all violates the DMCA. But it's the right thing to do. Therefore, the community has established a standard for breaking the law, which is you tell the vendor and you give them a period of time to fix the product, and then most people regard it as okay to publish your results. But technically, publishing the results, you're confessing to a crime, so it's kind of insane, but that's where we are. The DES was the encryption standard approved by the government, strongly pushed. They tried to force everyone to use this, and they were quite successful in the 80s and 90s. By this being made, it was all financial data was encrypted. They had a contest. That's how they do this. They announced that we are trying to make an encryption standard. We invite mathematicians and everyone to propose algorithms. Then they get algorithms. Then they get mathematicians to attack the algorithms. They publish them on a list, and after a few years, they have finalists, and after another couple of years, they have the final one, which then gets a stamp of approval from the government, and this was the data encryption standard. That's why it's very handy for everyone, because the people that trust the government use the one that's approved. The people that don't trust the government use the runners-up, because after the first stage, the 5 or 6 that make it to the last stage are probably all equally secure. They just have very minor differences in their security. And so if you take the ones the government didn't approve but did make it to the final stage, you have pretty secure algorithms. And indeed, this was poisoned by the government. IBM proposed a 128-bit key, which would have been completely secure, so the government shortened it to 56 bits, because it is now quite obvious the NSA could crack 56 bits, because the rest of the world figured out how to crack that later, and they carefully made something. They're always trying to accomplish NOBUS, is the military intelligence term for this. They want an encryption scheme that nobody can break except us. They want a secret government backdoor so when they want in, they can get in, but nobody else can get in. And they did accomplish that in the 70s and 80s because only the NSA had computers fast enough to break those 56-bit keys, and the public world didn't have them until the end of the 90s. So they did achieve this for a while, but a lot of people are quite disturbed that the government is seeking this no-bus way in, but that is what they want. Anyway, they reduced it to 56 bits, and here's the deep crack. The Electronic Frontier Foundation in San Francisco in 1998 built a computer with special chips and had hundreds and hundreds of these special processors that were so fast that they could crack a DES key in 3 days of computation by brute force. And that was the dramatic example that proved that we really have to stop using it because any reasonable attacker, like even organized crime group or something, could easily do this. It's no longer safe against anybody. So one easy fix was triple DES. Triple DES is where you run 3 rounds of DES. Now the simplest way to do it, to understand it, would be to run 3 rounds of encryption with 3 different keys, and that would certainly make it much stronger. But what's actually done, most commonly, is you do one encryption with a key, then a decryption with a different key, then another encryption with the first key, which is kind of crazy, but the reason they did that is because there was a large infrastructure of devices already running single DES. People sold machines to banks and other insurance companies and everybody else that encrypted data with this system. So now the new stuff would come out with triple DES, and some companies would want to run in legacy mode, where they continue to use single DES to interoperate with their established infrastructure. And so you want an easy way for triple DES to revert to single DES. And the trick is if you do encrypt, decrypt, encrypt, if you make both keys the same, that's the same thing as single DES. So there was an easy way to have an adjustment. Run this equipment in legacy mode to interoperate, and then when we finally replace all the equipment, switch the key and it'll move up to the more secure mode. Anyway, that's a common issue in the industry. You have to have some plan for people to move. Once you've tricked people into installing a huge infrastructure of vulnerable junk, you have to make it easy for them to gradually move up to the next version. Microsoft is aware of this. Every version of Microsoft domain controllers have been like this. They use a system which is too weak to use within a few years. Not intentionally, but that's just the way it is. So, and every time you make a Microsoft domain controller, when you promote your server to domain controller, you'll get a screen that says, do you want a native domain controller? Which means all the domain controllers in your system have to be up to the latest version, and that would be the most secure, or do you want a legacy domain controller that will speak all the old protocols with your old domain controllers on your network, which is less secure, but that means you can keep using your old stuff for longer. And that's something many businesses want to do because they don't want to go to the bother of upgrading everything all at once. So AES was a standard in 2002. They took 5 years to approve it. It's a block cipher that works on 128-bit blocks of text, and it has various keys, 128 bits and a couple other sizes. The algorithm's from Rinjail. It is considered very secure. I've never heard anybody have any argument that it's backdoored or has any weakness. Everybody uses it all over the place. IDEA is one of the ones that was not approved, but made it to the finals, so it's one that you might use if you don't trust the government. It's relatively similar, but was developed by different researchers. It says what PGP uses. Pretty good privacy is an encryption software you can buy. Blowfish is one made by Bruce Schneier. Bruce Schneier gives very good talks. He writes very good books. He's pretty much a celebrity in the world of mathematicians. Cryptography is probably the most famous one. One of the 2 or 3 most famous ones. And anyway, he had a candidate called Blowfish that didn't win the race, but it made it to the finals, so it's another option. You can use it. RC4 is the most widely used stream cipher that encrypts things bit by bit. This is included in most wireless protocols. It was included in WEP, and it was included in the WPA TKIP version. And it's used in 30% of TLS communications at least about a year ago. It was built into all kinds of cryptography. There has been a sort of rock and a hard place issue in cryptography. In HTTPS, people kept finding padding oracle attacks that broke the block ciphers, a whole series of them called Lucky 13 and Crime and Beast. And so the cure for that was to go to RC4, but RC4 has a different problem from not being white, so when that became popular, they'd go back to a block cipher and they go back and forth. Both of them have weaknesses and can be cracked. RC4 is now pretty much condemned by everybody. The latest attacks have gotten so nasty that they're trying to get rid of it entirely and remove it from service. I was surprised. You may remember last week we talked about wireless, and I said WPA is fine, but apparently I'm out of date. There's an attack that happened a year ago where this guy claims he can break WPA, the oldest version of it, using TKIP within an hour because of failures in RC4. And there's a guy that gave a talk at a conference and explained the method, but as far as I can tell, you can't do it with like just a Corley virtual machine or anything yet. It takes very powerful computers. I would make a project out of it if we could. So apparently we should usually go upgrading to WPA2 because the WPA attack does exist. It's just insanely difficult now, but as computers get faster, it'll probably get more and more within reach. So maybe within 5 or 10 years, I'll be able to give homework cracking WPA. So the cure is to go to WPA2 that doesn't use RC4. RC5 is a block cipher, not a stream cipher, another one created by Ron Rivest. It's another one that was, I think, a contender for AES, but did not win. RINJail was the one that won and got the stamp of approval by the government to be the Advanced Encryption Standard. One cool thing about RC5 is it has many different sizes, so you can test to see how big a key you can crack. Now, let's say 56-bit keys were cracked in the 90s. 64-bit keys have been cracked by brute force. A 72-bit key crack is underway. It is expected to take 1,000 years to finish, which might sound stupid, but it's not all that stupid because if computers keep doubling in speed every 2 years, then in 20 years they will be 1,000 times faster. So 1,000 years at the current pace would mean it will only take 20 years if computers keep getting better, and we will see. But this means if you want an example right now, a 72-bit key cannot be cracked by brute force by any known public technique. However, if you look at the history, the evidence strongly suggests that the NSA was 20 years ahead of the rest of us. So the government could crack 56-bit keys 20 years before the public could. So you probably should consider that depending on your threat model. If you're trying to hide from the NSA, good luck. But anyway, you would have to give yourself, I think you'd have to assume that they're 20 years ahead of the rest of us. Yeah?
When you said that, like, WPA was broken, like, maybe not realistically broken, but I mean, like, and that talk was more like, so if you, like, were the NSA, you could break it?
Apparently, I guess that means if you were the NSA, you probably could have broken it 20 years ago.
Right, okay. What if you had, like, a botnet that broke the computing power?
That's a good question, and I don't know all the details. We got a paper there. I don't know quite how powerful this machine had to be. I took a quick look into it. I would like to make a project out of it if it was at all possible, but there doesn't seem to be any version of software that's readily available for normal people to use that does this attack. It's a fairly new attack, but they did it in 1 hour, so maybe. That's why it's apparently not only possible, but practical for fairly large computers right now. And that probably means if you had a botnet, you could probably do it. Anyway, so I got a few iClicker questions. But I'm not aware if anyone's done that yet. But it does mean we probably ought to quit using WPA because it's not out of reach anymore. And it means if your threat model is the NSA, they've probably been sailing through your WPA for years. Like I say, if you're trying to hide from the NSA, I don't envy you, because they have many things. Even if you have good cryptography, they can get in lots of other ways. They will just bribe the people you trust. They will sneak bugs in your house. If those guys are your enemies, you got troubles. Anyway,
Snowden the only one now, so far?
No, supposedly there's another guy after Snowden that's also started leaking stuff. I saw some articles about that and some leaks that people said definitely did not come from Snowden. So they are very, very concerned, because the whole principle of the national security apparatus is they will have these no-bus holes, and it'll be nobody but us because they keep the secrets. And to me, the real worrisome part of Snowden is it proved that the NSA cannot keep their secrets. And their whole model of existence is based on them keeping secrets. So if they can't keep secrets, their whole mission is in deep trouble. But anyway, let's try a few of these. Which one of these hides the existence of a message? All right, I'll quit at 55. All right, and that's steganography. hides a message inside another image or another file so you don't even know it's there unless you know to look. This is what Anna Chapman, the Russian spy, used to sneak the secrets she got out of Washington a few years ago by seducing important people in Washington. She had a little computer and she was hiding them with steganography. And when they caught her, she fled the country and left her computer behind, and they found the code on there of how she was doing it. So that's a covert channel when you're sending a message and you don't even want anyone to know that you sent the message. Which process uses mathematics to find problems in the technique and open an encrypted message? All right, I'll quit at 30. All right, and that's cryptanalysis. A very important branch of mathematics. The algorithm is just the steps it takes to encrypt a message. Cryptanalysis is the study of algorithms. All right. All right. What's the weakest technique on this list? Quit at 25. All right, the weakest thing on that list is CSS. For movies, it's only 40 bits. DES is 56 bits, much stronger. CSS was just intended to prevent copyright theft of movies and was cracked much earlier. Yeah, popular, yeah, anyway.
Wait a minute, hold on.
Yeah, CSS is 40 bits. Yeah, CSS is 40 bits. DES is 56 bits. This is 128 bits. This is 112 bits.
You said what's the weakest? That's CSS?
The weakest one is CSS.
They made a big deal about that.
They did, because it was so weak, people were easily able to crack it, and then they had a big argument saying, even though you can, you shouldn't, because naughty, naughty, and the law says you shouldn't. Whereas most people are not willing to be protected by such a fragile thing as everyone knows you can crack it, but we tell you not to, and that's why we have BitTorrent and everything else. But DES was intended to make it so you really can't get in there. And it did until 99.
That's not the point. The point is CS is weaker than DES.
That's right, so D is the right answer.
D is the right answer.
Yeah, D is the right answer. Yeah, D is the right answer. Okay.
Oh, so triple DES is 112 bit, you said?
Yeah, triple DES is 2 DES keys, so 56 and 56. It's about 112. There's nothing wrong with triple DES. If you're using triple DES or AES, nobody's getting in your stuff. Although triple DES is a patch on a legacy protocol like WPA. So, but as far as anybody knows, right now, triple DES and AES are both fine. Triple DES is kind of slower. It's more old-fashioned than AES, but they're both perfectly fine as far as anybody knows right now. Good. All right, which one used the 56-bit key and was used by American businesses?
You just said.
Yep. Well, maybe you'll all get it right. In the past, I've found that most of the time, even when I give the answer on slide 3, most of them still get it wrong on slide 4. It's a psychological issue.
I might be wrong.
I'm quitting at 25. All right. Well, hopefully people know it's DES.
Yep.
And they do know it's DES. Good. All right. That's important. That was a big scandal. That was the first of many scandals where it was abundantly clear that the government is lying to us and telling us to use stuff that they know is not safe. That is a fundamental problem with cryptography, and has a lot to do with why cryptographers tend to be rebels. Anyway, so public key cryptography is a miracle. Suppose you want to send a password to Google. I have no secure channel to Google at all. I don't have a phone number. Can't drive to where they are. How do I exchange a secret key with Google? I don't have a trusted second channel. So public key cryptography means you can send secrets over an insecure line without ever having a secure line, which is fantastic. And here's the game. Everybody that wants to play this game has to make a key pair. Google has to make a key pair, and you have to make a key pair before you start. You have a private key you never tell anybody, and you have a public key that you tell everybody in the world. This is awesome, because private key cryptography fundamentally is illogical. It relies on an oxymoron. You have a thing called a shared secret. And if two people know a secret, it's not a secret anymore, because you don't know how many copies of the key the other person made. You don't know there's only two people. You don't know that they didn't store it somewhere unsafe and get it stolen. You really don't know how many people have that key with a shared secret system. It's a fundamental oxymoron. The only thing that works, though, is a secret you never tell anybody. That's a sustainable system. And a public thing you tell everybody. That's certainly possible. This is therefore intrinsically much more logical and stronger. And the game is, once I have a key pair, I announce my public key. Now everybody can send me secrets. Anybody wants to tell me anything, encrypt it with my public key, and I can open it with my private key, and nobody else can open it. I can't send anything with this system. I can only receive. That's the problem. The destination has to make a key pair. This is what held up Snowden. Snowden wanted to leak a bunch of top secret NSA stuff, and he wanted to do it safely. So he wanted the journalist Glenn Greenwald to get it. But journalist Glenn Greenwald was not technical and could not figure out how to make a key pair, which is not that easy. So he couldn't send him secrets. You can be a genius, but you can't send secrets to the other end until they make a key pair, and that has never been made easy. So he actually recorded a video, like you can see in this class, a tutorial video trying to teach Glenn Greenwald how to do it. And Glenn Greenwald still couldn't do it, so he went to a technical expert. I think that was Lauren Poitras or somebody else. He had to have his technical expert set up the key pair for him, and that's what Snowden wanted to avoid. Now, more and more people are in on the secret. You know, this is the problem. The fundamental problem with this system, it only lets technical experts talk to each other with safety, at least the email version of it. But the browser version happens automatically in your browser, and anybody can use that. Yeah?
So you can only receive?
You can only receive.
So, but if you're...
But the person at the other end has to make another key pair, and then they can receive, and then the two of you can talk to each other. That's the fundamental problem with the system. It's hard to set up. Yeah?
So you want to respond to that secret they sent you, you have to make another key.
They have to make a key. And they have to share their private key, and they have to understand what they're doing. They can't be helpless, technically, or you can't talk to them. And that's what's preventing. This is why people get mad at Hillary Clinton. She sent all her stuff with unencrypted email, and they said, why did you do that? And she said, because nobody can receive encrypted email. Only people inside the State Department. I can't talk to foreign leaders because they can't figure out how to do this. So everybody's using plain text email for diplomatic secrets all over the place, because until the recipients figure it out, you can't use encrypted email. Email encryption is a huge unsolved problem. Anyway, so asymmetric cryptography, now this gives you what you want. You now have authenticity and non-repudiation. I can sign things with my private key, and anybody can prove that's me with my public key, so now I can make a loan agreement on the internet, which is what this was designed for. This was included in the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, and the goal was to make it possible to do financial transactions over the internet. So now you could have a signature that made a legal agreement done over the internet that was as valid as a signature done with a pen on a piece of paper. That was the huge advantage here. The asymmetric algorithms are much more scalable. If you think about private key encryption, if everybody in this room wanted to have a private key, I'd have to have a key I share with you, and another key I share with you, and another key I share with you, and every pair of students would have to have a key. So if you have n people, you have n squared keys, which is insane. That doesn't scale up to the size of the internet. But to make everyone on the internet talk safely, every person has to make one key pair, and then they share it with everybody. So that scales. That if you have n people, you only need n keys. So, two n keys, but anyway, that's the point. That's the game. This was invented by Ravesh, Shamir, and Edelman, although to be fair, it has leaked out that the National Security Agency had it 20 years earlier, so it was privately reinvented outside the security circle. So anyway, but they're the public inventors of this. They made the RSA system, and that system uses prime numbers and multiplies prime numbers together to make the keys. And the reason it's safe is the public key is the product of two prime numbers, and figuring out what two prime numbers are multiplied to compose a number is one of the famous unsolved problems in mathematics. There is no easy way to do it, so that's what makes it safe. There is no way to deduce the private key from the public keys without taking an enormous amount of computer time. That's the current situation. And SSL, HTTPS, uses this algorithm. Diffie-Hellman developed the heart of it. Whitfield, Diffie, and Hellman developed the key exchange trick, which is basically this trick with prime numbers, where you multiply two prime numbers and you exchange the product over an unsecured line, and no one can figure out the prime numbers underneath it in any reasonable amount of time. The prime number system is computationally burdensome. Your keys used to be 1024 bits, now they're 2048 bits or longer, whereas private keys are something like 128 bits, so it takes a lot more computer time to do public key encryption. So the NSA pushed elliptic curve cryptography very hard for the last 5 years, saying we should all switch to it. It uses a different mathematics, not based on prime numbers, and the keys are much shorter and the computations are much faster, like up to 20 times faster. This is why HTTPS certificates got so cheap. I was able to get one for free from Cloudflare. They gave it to the whole world because ECC keys are much cheaper to maintain on your servers. The problem is, earlier this year, maybe it was last year, the NSA sent out a sudden panic alert saying, wait, we've changed our mind, go back to RSA, because of quantum computers. They said quantum computers are really coming and they really are going to crack these things, and they say now you should quit using the elliptic curves, you should make all the keys 4 times longer in everything to prepare for quantum computers. So my interpretation of that, which I cannot prove, I do not have top secret clearance, thank God, so I don't, but my guess is that means they have a working quantum computer inside the NSA. That is not, I think, much of a stretch because there are already pretty strong prototypes at Google and other companies out here. The ones that are publicly available cannot yet do anything important, but the technology does seem to be real and it seems to be coming. In another 10 or 20 years, quantum computers will be around and they will blow away all current encryption, and they will have to have some much stronger encryption to cope with it. Elgamal is another algorithm that can be used using discrete logarithms, which is a more generalized mathematical issue than the prime number multiplication. We'll be talking about this in a cryptography class next semester, but it's just another system that does the same thing, a public key and a private key, and a difficult mathematical problem. So if one of these is broken, we might be able to switch to one of the others. The problem, of course, like I say, is another one was ECC. The ECC in particular that the NSA promoted, the specific details of it was almost certainly backdoored. And this was pretty damn dirty and scary. Microsoft researchers noticed that the random number generator, they told you to use certain numbers as the seed, and that made it seem like if you knew another number, you could predict the random numbers. And then they actually paid $1 million bribe to the RSA company to make this their standard in their products. So it was actually pretty nasty. And anyway, this is probably it. This is almost certainly what they did was poison the random number generator, so it wasn't random, and the NSA could predict the numbers, which Bruce Schneier said is probably the smartest no-bust system. If you want to have a backdoor, that is probably the smartest backdoor, hardest to find and hardest to break, as long as nobody leaks the secret from inside the NSA. But the whole no-bust system relies on the NSA keeping their secrets, and since Snowden, people are a whole lot less confident that the NSA can really keep their secrets. Anyway, Silent Circle is one of the many companies that deliberately quit using approved standards because they're so tired of this. You know for sure 3 times the US government has lied to us and approved bad standards, and why should we keep trusting them? And here's the quantum computing stuff I mentioned. This is the thing that came out talking about how people should change all these algorithm recommendations and make all the keys much longer due to the coming quantum computers. Anyway, that's what they say. No longer use SHA-256 or AES-128 or RSA or Diffie-Hellman or the elliptic curve systems. Instead, you should upgrade everything to much stronger ones. Everyone is still kind of in a loop, and they're still trying to decide what a quantum-proof algorithm would be. So we can expect big changes in the next few years here as more tips leak out of the NSA about what quantum computers are going to do. But apparently, in the short run, they're going to do what we all were afraid they would do, which is break all the cryptographic systems we're using now. So if I was encrypting stuff and I wanted to promise people it would still be safe in 20 years, I'd be very nervous because a new technology is coming and we do not yet know how much damage it's going to do. Anyway, I think before I go ahead, we should take a break. It's 9:55. Let's pick up at 10:05. I'll stop the recording here. All right. This is 123, chapter 12a.